Today we're going to talk about bank situation relative to not being a bank today, or trying to learn the new normal. We're going to talk about what's happening in the space and how we're dealing with engagement. I'm going to actually cut the video because I don't want to see myself, and I don't know that it's going to record it. So hopefully the audio is coming in just fine by now. The program, as Allison said, is actually going to run probably around 45 minutes. We want to make sure everybody gets time back. If we go long, it's because you've asked a lot of questions. So I'm going to take the time to kind of show what we're working on and what you need to think about, especially in the bank space. For those of you that don't know me, I've been a financial professional, gosh, for some 22 years. I tend to focus a lot on wealth management, and in doing so, it grew our firm to a significant size of assets under management. Also did financial planning. We did a good amount of life insurance placement. And then also during that time, we built it around this process that we created called asset mapping, which is just the need to visualize everything going on in people's lives. And so for the last 12 years of my life, and pretty much full time for the last 5, I've been the CEO and founder of AssetMap, which is literally touching thousands of people around the world now. We just crossed 1 million people in AssetMap, and it's one of the fastest growing fintechs out there, mostly because we're trying to do something completely different. And for those of you to understand kind of what's new today, you got to understand, I think, what the customer journey is. And specifically, when you think about people interacting with banks today, they have usually accumulated some level of accounts, maybe at their employer, maybe an IRA their parents told them to start when they were a kid. They bought life insurance from maybe their cousin who was in the business for 5 days. And maybe they think they're sophisticated because they're using your online banking. But the reality is that when they have to make financial decisions, there's a lot of other people that are dependent upon them, and they tend to get stuck when it comes time to making kind of holistic decisions. So they don't know where to go. So when bankers come into this situation today, we think that the most important thing we can do is figure out what's going on in their life. And the banks have a very special relationship with customers in that they usually handle their day-to-day checking needs and maybe their mortgage needs. But we have to take it to another level. We have to organize what's going on in people's lives from the money standpoint. Because when we do that and we enable our financial professionals to get involved in this, we can actually start to apply our insight in real time. And maybe instead of giving them some big statement, we can start giving them a view into their world unlike they've ever seen before, something that is totally scalable, something that can work with a lot of other advisors or executives that might come into the foray. And the interesting thing about this is that we have been continuing to find that what customers really want is not what we keep providing as financial advocates, right? Think about it. Does anybody actually think about, boy, I wish I had a statement to look at. Oh, I go online, I can look at my app, and then you put it away. It's not something you look at consistently. We tend to need financial information episodically when we're going through situations. But the challenge is we've noticed a lot of us moving to financial planning or have been doing that for some number of years. So there's a huge initiative. We talked to a major bank today, a global bank, and they again reiterated the same thing. Financial planning is the lead-in. The challenge is that that's not actually what clients are asking for, right? They don't know what to ask for. And so the challenge for us is to try to find a way to deliver that concise value. Now, the key for us in the financial space is we need to start delivering, I'm not going to call it reporting, but engagement conversations in the form of tangible, let's say, output. In this case, we call it an asset map. It has to address their very specific, unique, customized situation. Otherwise, it's just a PDF from some marketing brochure, okay? And so one of the bigger challenges that I think we're seeing banks have is that they need to find a way to mass customize without it taking a bazillion years or costing an inordinate amount of money to execute this thing. And we need to do it in 10, 15 minutes. And we're going to show you actually how to do that today because engagement is the name of the game. The fun thing about AssetMap, as we used to do this, is that the original roots of AssetMap was to try to visualize a household regardless of complexity, whether it was a traditional family, a same-sex family, a single parent, a business owner with a trust, a charity with embedded companies overseas. It didn't matter. We had to try to create a visualization that would still work effectively and do that. And so what I did is I built this leadership team from a whole bunch of people from different industry that now run AssetMap exclusively and effectively, so that you understand what we focus on and the perspective we're coming from is that we think that the big future for financial advice and of course the services that support it is what? It's engagement and guidance, right? It's not actually financial planning, despite the fact I'm a recovering financial planner myself, is that is that it's about engagement, getting people engaged, talking to them about what's going on in life, and then providing guidance. Now, the key for you, if you're in the bank space and you have financial professionals and you lead with advice, one of the bigger challenges we've seen is that the main platforms of the day really focus on the tech deliverable as the value proposition. In other words, here's a great new website you can go to and you can put some numbers in and calculate your scores and yay. Or it's, here's this awesome 80-page report that's customized with you because it has your name on it. Okay, and it basically looks like Excel printed out 800 times. These are not ways to differentiate, and these are not necessarily ways to engage. And the challenges we're seeing a lot of advisors are losing the one thing that we have as a value proposition over the next generation of robo-advice, which is our relationship. Banks generally have a pretty strong relationship either on an interpersonal level at a regional level, or they have kind of strong loyalty within the bank because they have one thing that financial advisors don't always have, which is multiple accounts, right? If you have debt and you also have checking and or savings with a single institution, you tend to be more loyal and will go there first as opposed to going to the open ecosystem, unless you think your bank actually can't handle it. And so the key is that how do we not lose our identity and give personal experiences and engagement that's not going to cost us an arm and a leg because we have to custom, chisel something out of rock for every single person. That's not going to work. So we tend to focus on the following 4 things, and it'll really inform why we think what we think, and what I'm going to ask you some questions that engage you and think about where you're taking your strategy if you're in a position to control it. The first thing that really matters today, if you're going to deliver advice, is you got to have suitability, and that means know your client. Now, we've talked about this for years from the compliance aspect, which basically dictates that we have to prove we know our client. Reg BI, the SEC standard, comes out at the end of this month, and of course, everybody is still scrambling to execute on that fun proposition. But the challenge is that we don't actually know how it's going to play out. The one ubiquitous issue for all financial advisors, whether you're on the bank, through the insurance, to the investment side, and anything in between, is clearly we must know the client. And that's true whether they're high net worth or whether they just they're opening their first checking account. We got to clearly know the client. The interesting thing about when you know your client is that you actually uncover opportunities to help people. That means cross-selling is really the future. Multiple lines of business is really the critical part of making sure that the customer acquisition value is monetized, because getting a new customer is a lot more expensive than cross-selling an existing. And the key for us is that we want to focus on ways to help advisors and professionals do more cross-selling, which means that they make more money, which means they last in the business longer, which means the longer value proposition really kind of holds. And at the end of the day, whatever we deliver in engagement, it's got to be fun for the customer. Otherwise, they will not do it. Today, I think we're competing literally against attention span itself. Whether we're looking at all these apps on the phone, the question is, how do we stay relevant? And so these are the 4 things that we think about all the time. And how do we deliver that to the financial community? I'm sure you've experienced this already. If you're doing any kind of, we'll call it cross engagement or cross-selling or selling multiple lines of business to customers of the bank, is that nobody wants to be convinced and sold anymore, right? They want to be engaged. They want to know that you have some level of their interest in mind. And they want to buy. They want to buy because it's easy to buy. It's easy to move the money, to transfer it, to execute it without getting stuck in the morass. In fact, we all know and see plenty of surveys that people are actually willing to spend more money if you can make it convenient. It doesn't have to be a price game. And the key to lifetime value at the bank is always going to be in not just the first sale, where we say 1x of the first product, right? We have a banking line, we have a mortgage line, we have a business unit line. But rather the opportunity to engage people over time and earn their annuity business or their AUM business, or maybe their life insurance, or they exit their company and they sell within the family. That's how we get to 10x the value. In other words, a client who does multiple lines of business with us over time and is engaged will be worth 10x the value of someone who just does one. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I think the interesting thing about this is that many of us have moved towards financial planning as the way to engage customers at a whole nother level. But I thought this cartoon was hilarious, right? I mean, look at the monitor on this guy's desk. It's hopefully your monitor doesn't look like that at home. But this cartoon is over 30 years old, and it basically shows that financial planning is mostly gibberish to most people, right? And that is because it's too complicated. It never was intended to be an engagement strategy. It's a deep technical experience. And as much as we would love to say we could do this, we're only seeing adoption of financial planning at 20 to 40% within the customers. And of those customers, it tends to be the highest net worth only, and everyone else kind of gets ignored. That being said, there's always diamonds in the rough, and there's a lot of individuals that have capacity and access to capital, not the least of which is their own that the bankers don't know about, right? They have it with another institution, or they have a spouse that has money in another place. But also they're going to inherit a significant amount of money. And if you've looked at any of the numbers recently, the baby boomer population is going to move $65 trillion in the next 20 some years, because they're going to either need to consume it from IRAs and or business sales and real estate, or they're going to distribute it through estates. And that means that there's a population that's going to get enriched in a whole nother level. And we want to grab that market. So what's the point of that? Financial planning is actually where financial engagement should really be for everybody. The challenge, again, is that when we technically discuss with a client, their life in the financial planning world, this is intimidating. I don't want to talk about that, right? I mean, this is, I'm going to show that I'm incompetent. And so a lot of people kind of shut down in this environment. And we tend to be too technical when we're just trying to provide clarity on what matters to people, right? And so the key for what we're doing these days and why it's been really working is because advisors and financial professionals in bank have to do the first part, which is I got to explore what's going on in your life very quickly. I got to know what's going on for you. I got to figure out a way to educate you as to what other options you have, see where I can fix, what can I fill, what can I replace, what can I bring ideas to the table. Have you thought about bringing in a business banker here? Boy, we should probably talk to the credit unit. Gosh, I think you have an annuity. Maybe we should talk about what else we can do with this annuity. The key is to educate people first and engage them before they're going to want to buy what you're selling. And then if you can elevate people's situation, gosh, you win every time, right? And so the key to do this is to do it in every interaction. And the proposal that we're making to the major community or the industry is really that we have to find a way as the financial professional community to elevate people's current financial condition. The only way we're going to do that is if we educate them and help them by understanding what's going on in their world. It's just got to be fun and interesting to do, because ultimately we think that the future of you providing advice, especially in the bank channel, is by figuring out how you can apply the collective advisor intelligence in your organization. Think about that. Most banks will have, from the frontline tellers all the way through to business consultants in credit management as well as financial management, there's at least 4, and then sometimes trust and estate, 5 layers or more in some cases of expertise that could be brought to the client's situation. Why that's important is because if you can't collaborate amongst those 5 parties, you're missing the opportunity to cross-engage and of course, bubble up opportunity that needs attention. And so that's why applying advisor intelligence is really the critical part of how I think banks are going to need to engage and really mechanize and monetize effectively what's going to happen when I interact with my bank in the new normal, right? When I'm not necessarily going to go to the branch, but I know that there's enormous financial resources and intelligence behind this that effectively could come and help elevate my situation. Now, for us, we tend to think that the problem of delivering financial advice these days is too big. It's just too big. And so you can solve this with 100 different tech tools and bring so much capacity to the table that financial advisors themselves are going to be overwhelmed and they won't do anything. They'll go back to what they've always done. And I think that's the biggest challenge. So for us, and having come from the field myself, I tend to keep us to focus on what matters, and everything else that doesn't make the list is not on it. That's it. There's 3 things that matter for all financial professionals, and they should be doing every day, no matter what. It's the highest revenue producing activity. They should be meeting with clients. They should be figuring out whether those clients need help, and they should be looking for or into existing clients and how they can help them more. These are the highest revenue producing activities for all of them. Everything else should be delegated or techified. And so within our platform, we tend to think that you should focus on these things. What are they? Organize people's lives. Do that. You do that, you win them over, you understand how to help them or whether they're not helpable in some cases. Number 2, you got to tell them whether they're on track for their major goals. Tell me if I'm okay. And then lastly, you need to figure out a way to ultimately always be proactively searching for ways to help your existing clients, because even though they're not calling you or asking for help, that doesn't mean they don't need it. And it doesn't mean they wouldn't appreciate you calling them and offering them ideas and advice. Our highest net worth clients, they always expected it. They expected a call every quarter and every so often to say, hey, are you thinking about me and all this money I'm paying you? Why am I doing it? And so the key for all of us is to get into a way where we can intelligently go and help people ultimately find ways out. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The first thing is that many of us have talked about having a customer-centric experience, and we think that that's hogwash because almost nobody actually does customer centricity, right? They're still putting people in these 18-page reports that nobody's reading. What if we were to take those things that are most important to a family, put them at the top, make it them, make it about them. This is a family, if you can see the screen, it's John and Meredith Jenkins in their 50s. They have a son, Marshall, who's just to the right of them. Betty Stinson is a mother-in-law. To Meredith, she's her mother. They're going to probably take care of her financially. They're thinking about, gosh, what do I need to do because I'm in this sandwich generation, right? I'm taking care of my parents who didn't save enough, and I'm taking care of my kids who are going to cost a fortune in education. And of course, I'm trying to save for retirement. This is a real big challenge, and it's common. In addition, it turns out Meredith has a side business, a company that we've actually funded. We've done some debt financing for her because a side business she started with a business partner. And it turns out also they have a special needs trust because Marshall's special needs. Now that kind of story does not typically come up in our typical CRM systems, even though the accounts might be held or kind of merged or reported. So we may not have that emotional insight into the stuff that they're dealing with. They're dealing with, gosh, parents that they're going to have to take care of financially under a different registration and a different address. They're taking care of a company. Gosh, they're making decisions about their company and the profitability during these times with PPP and all these other issues, right? We're dealing with special needs situations, which probably means I got to bring in my trust guys who understand what to do here, because there are a bunch of tax and moral issues that have to be contemplated here for which I can solve problems and bring them to the table, okay? We don't get that insight unless we ask, but if we don't have the ability to report, we're not going to ask, right? If there's no reason to collect information because I can't give it back to you, I'm not going to collect it. Let's make it so that we can collect this information. Number two, I mentioned that this is a customer-centric experience, so let's put the clients in the middle. Let's start talking about what's going on for them. We need to understand our customers' cash flow. It's one of the bigger things we've seen missing in the banks is that we don't necessarily see, we see their cash positions, we see how much capital they have access to, their liquidity, but we tend not to always see at the teller level, we don't see where their cash flow is. And really, cash flow funds pretty much everything. When you think about it, it funds all the debt that they finance with us. It funds their savings. It funds their lifestyle. It funds taxes. It funds a whole bunch of things. And so most of us in America are really using our cash flow as the real kind of guide of what our capacity for saving and spending is, unless we're just independently wealthy, which is not the greater population. And so it's important for us to talk about what's currently coming into the household at a high level. What kind of work are they doing? And then also, what can they expect to come in the future, even if it's silhouetted here. You can see there, this gentleman is working as the SVP of marketing, and then he also has an annuity that he expects to pay out in the future, and Social Security expects to be there. What assets is John controlling? He has a 401k, he has an IRA, and he has a split interest in a business. Actually, it's a building with his brother, which we would learn wouldn't be on a balance sheet, right? But it probably could show up here, so we could talk about the issues and opportunities there. Meredith is working as a consultant. That means she's working for herself. She has needs for benefits. She probably has needs for retirement plans, independent retirement plans. She has a couple of different assets, including a Roth IRA, which clearly she could be doing other programs like a SEP or an individual 401k to defer more taxes. Why has nobody talked about this? She told me that Granny's going to give her some money, but it's sitting in some bank CDs. Is that something we can help her with now? Does that make any sense to keep an inheritance in CDs? Probably not. Is there tax leverage there? Maybe opportunity. Brokerage accounts and 529 plans, cash value life insurance. What's the purpose of these? How do they make sense? Right? These are opportunities. Joint accounts, maybe real estate, mortgages, all the things that you can think of, and of course, insurance protections like life insurance, property and casualty. How do these things play together? Do they have a role? Is there something we should be talking about at the bank level? Can I bring in my annuity specialist down the hall? Is there someone else that we can talk to? Maybe a tax accountant who has a relationship with the bank. Maybe I trust people. Maybe my private wealth management needs to get involved. There's a good amount of money here. The key is that we got to enable people to see this opportunity, uncover it, by also giving something back to the client. Very important. Number two, and again, I do recommend that you can ask questions. If you do have questions, please start putting them into the question bar. This is typically when we get some of our best questions. We will address them towards the end. Number two is I think we need to answer for the clients the question, the big elephant in the room question, which is, are we going to be okay for retirement, for education funding, for life insurance, for a long-term care event? Do we have enough capital? We need to use our best practices to literally in 30 seconds tell them whether they're okay. Not 2 hours of financial planning. We need to know in 30 seconds. I need to know directionally where we need to go and what we need to focus on. And one of the things that we've been thinking about when we reimagined financial planning of the future, we'll call it financial planning 2.0, is that one thing is that everybody has learned attention deficit disorder. That means it's got to be on one page, not 50 pages, one page. If I can't put this information on one page, I'm going to lose you by the time you have to flip the page. By the way, who works on paper anymore anyway? So it's got to be literally on one screen or one page. Number two is that it's got to be interactive. And so I need to know what the impact is of actually earning 5% versus 6%, right? Am I going to be fully funded at 5%? Then I'm going to be overfunded at 6%. I'm going to be truly underfunded at 4%. I need to understand the implication there. And if there's a savings requirement, just tell me how much I got to save per month. That's what most people want to know. How much do I have to save? I can afford it. I can't afford it. All right. What do we need to do? We need to negotiate these assumptions in financial planning so we can get to a place where the math models are even comprehensible. We all know that forecasting a 30-year horizon on any finance is a joke. Okay. These assumptions are all made up, right? Tax rates, mortality, what you're going to spend. We're negotiating actually what the variables are going to look like. The key to that is that we need to be able to do that at both the high level and the detail level for those engineers that need to understand when they run out of money. But more importantly, we need to understand the priorities of them. In other words, if we're looking at for a client and saying, okay, we ran these analysis for you, for retirement, you're funded here, for life insurance, you're funded here, disability scenarios, education, long-term care, whatever, okay? They need to be live and constantly tracked. So any changes to the asset map and the facts that you have given to me, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm going to instantly be able to update where we are relative to our goals and know how to prioritize that. That is critical when you think about it. That's what people want to know is, do I have the right stuff and am I okay? If we can't answer that question, we're missing something. We're not actually delivering advice-led or guidance to them. We're just kind of pretending to be financial planning. And that's not going to be sustainable long-term, right? We need to find a way to continue to engage with people and make sure that they're part of this process continuously so that we get looked at as the purveyors of financial advice. The third thing that I say that is really critical is that you have to create a situation where you can continue to look at opportunities within the sales cycle and advice cycle. We have seen a significant amount of banks make investments in large data programs, and there's usually one or two very smart people in the home office who have access to it. And I don't know what they're doing with the data, but they must be having a party with it because it never gets down to the field. The people that actually really need this information are those that have the relationships. And so one of the things that we were really critical about was making sure that the financial professionals at the bank level had the capacity to look at the relationships that they had at both a management level as well as an individual advisor level and see where there are people that need their attention so that they could pick up the phone or they could send an email and they could say, listen, I see that there's a problem here. I'm looking at the household and gosh, your net worth really justifies that you start thinking about this kind of planning, or I noticed that your debt level is kind of high, or I noticed that you actually don't have any life insurance. Is that intentional or you just forgot to tell me, right? And if there is a problem, we have an outlet for you here in the firm. We can just take care of it, right? Because many of these things are just, can you get it done? And I think it's really critical going forward that advisors have the capacity to inspect their own book of business in an intelligible way so that they can uncover and be as proactive as they want to be. Not the least of which, when you think about long-term succession and handing that book of business to somebody else, you need to be able to migrate it amongst advisors who may come and go with the firm. And they need to be able to plug right into the current situation as it stands, not look it all up. 5 days later, I've got an Excel spreadsheet of nonsense. That's not going to work. This has to be accessible, mineable, filterable, and then, of course, executable at the field level, not just some data scientist in home office. Really critical. That's the way that we need to set that up. The most common, I think, question that we get about how we want to change the engagement process from not just a bank, but to a provider of financial guidance and engagement, which is really what banks have the capacity to be. If you look historically, hundreds of years ago, you went to the bank and you did everything there. What was available back then? Bank is the most trusted purveyor of financial advice in a sense that has changed and it needs to come back or has the capacity to come back. But in order to do so, we need to get rid of the antiquation, right? What's the antiquation? It's not the legacy systems, it's the legacy attitude that we can't engage quickly. With technology being what it is, we actually can engage faster than ever. And one of the important things that we have realized in financial engagement, whether you're working with boomers who are used to shaking your hand and looking you in the eye, or you're working with millennials who are used to, I don't even know who you are, but I see your emoji icon, and that's good enough for me, right? There's an entire breadth of individuals and their attitudes of how they want to engage with you today. And so we had to build a system that worked in all three of these kind of environments. The first is that it's really critical that if I'm meeting with you face-to-face on a digital or interpersonal, that I actually have the capacity to be part of a process of building your life in real time. Let's do a Lego project together. We'll build great rapport, and we'll also have an understanding of what's going on, and I'll be able to advise you in real time. The second way is, for those of you that don't want to see humans, I need to be able to actually mass engage with thousands of individuals in a customized way where they can go and they can collect information and build this on their iPhone or their iPad or whatever you're using. And then, of course, lastly, is if I already have the data, let's just integrate the data and let's build it for people so we don't have to waste any time. Here's what I mean by interaction. If your bank has a capacity, pardon me, to meet with people in person, we have to enable a paper-based environment or a digital environment. That means on a big screen or on paper that they can physically take with them, or you can email to them later. Mobile is important, but it really has gotten bypassed by the digital remote environment, which is what we're using today to actually communicate. 95% of our meetings are all over the web and screen sharing. The key for this is that when you're doing these rooms or these environments, these engagement experience of delivering advice and guidance in real time, is that it has to be the same in all four of these modalities. I can't learn different processes for different environments. I don't have the capacity for that. And of course, I want to set an expectation. Like if I want to go into Netflix, it looks the same pretty much on my phone as it does my laptop, as it does my television at home. I don't have to relearn the process, okay? Once I have to relearn the process, you're going to lose my interest, okay? So what's interesting about this is that today, if you look at our conference rooms, this is our new conference room, right? It's the size of my monitor. And how do I create that experience when I'm doing this virtually? Now, the interesting thing about this is that if you think about it from a situation, I typically have clients I know some information about, right? Like this guy, Joe, he's been a client for a while. We built his AssetMap for him because we managed some things. He told me some things anecdotally, like where he works. And he told me he's got some other income sources. He has an IRA somewhere. He's got an old 401k, but I don't know any details. I built a map for him anyway. I just built it. It takes me a couple seconds to build it. But he gets married and they come to the room and I don't know anything about Myriad, okay? She's complete blank slate. If I took the time to do a fact-finding meeting with Myriad, I'm going to be here for 30 minutes. We're going to be talking around in circles. I'm going to lose Joe, who's going to be texting, his buddy about what they're going to be doing later, or checking on the kids. What if I could just instantly overlay what their peers have? What if I could treat this like Amazon does and say, hey, people like you bought this also. In Netflix, people like you also watch these shows. You might like them because we know what you like. Well, the same thing is true in AssetMap. We know from this big data typically what people like you, quote unquote, have. Boomers, just before retirement, millennials, X generation, doctors, lawyers, you name it, there's something that's been built already for these people, or you can build your own. And so when we can apply what your peers have over the top of your existing information, we now get permission to ask questions about, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Why don't you have this? Why don't you have? You thought about this? Do you want me to solve this for you? And now an engagement opportunity turns into a solutions opportunity where we can now say, hey, I can take care of this. I can't do this, but I can refer you. I have this. We can take care of this. You know what the response is? Thank you. Thank you for being thoughtful enough for bringing up ideas that I thought were in the issues, but I didn't know whether you did it, so I didn't bring it up. You make it easy to have the conversation. What if we did this for our business clients? You know how many business clients banks have? I'm sure you do. They have a lot. But unfortunately, we don't engage them in this same way, right? We tend to talk and reach out to them. I know because I have several businesses, my business banker basically calls me up and he says, okay, yeah, we got a better rate, or I think I can set up a line of credit for you, or maybe we should refinance. That's about the extent of it. What if we were to go to our banking clients and say, okay, this is what you have with us, or this is what I know about you, and this is what your peers have too. What about that? What about bringing value to our clients in the form of, hey, do you want to know what the Joneses are doing? Do you want to know how we're helping other clients? Bring ideas to me that I can go execute by overlaying them on top of my current situation. It's me. It's about me. It should be about me. I'm the customer. Help me understand how you're going to help me. Engage and bring solutions to the table that I don't have to call you and ask you about. Okay? Because if I have to ask, then I'm already Googling it, and now I've already kind of culled it down so you're the best price. This is not the time to do that. You have to bring value to the table today, whether it's insurance, investment, legal, tax, banking, doesn't matter. Okay, you have to bring these ideas to the client and engage in a whole nother way. Now, the interesting thing about going direct to customer is that we needed to build a platform that would work and was agnostic to whether you were a brilliant financial person or whether you were, I don't know what you're talking about, okay? The key is to not make it so intimidating, but also not dumb. And the important part about it is to gamify it. So what we built is this concept called discovery, and it's an opportunity to get non-PII level information, but high level information so that a client can go, you can send them a link and at their own home, or if they're waiting for you in the branch, they can go on the kiosk, they just open up the iPad. We've seen a couple of banks do this to try to create engagement at the waiting environment when they're waiting to talk to a banker or a specialist. Hey, create your own asset map and literally just start here on the iPad. Boom, you start it, it's done, secure, and it sends, and then waiting in the room where the advisor meets the client is literally on the screen an entire asset map. And what if we were to take this and instead of saying, here's my business card, call me, but hey, if you want to build an asset map, maybe you can start doing this stuff and build, and start building this now with a unique QR code that they could just take their phone out and just start it, and then boom, they start it and they do it while they're waiting for their next show to turn on. Okay, I think what I'm getting at, and hopefully you hear it, is that we need to find ways to seriously engage at a whole nother level, and there are opportunities now, unlike ever before, to start giving people better experience. It is going to be the way that we compete ultimately. It's not going to be on product or interest rate. It's going to be on experience, probably relationships still, and credibility. And I think these are ways that we can start to continuously do this. Now, I'll leave you with this last idea, which is a lot of people have asked about data. How do you take the existing legacy data that's in a lot of the systems, CRM, maybe in the portfolios, accounting, or maybe even in the banking cash systems? Unfortunately, there have been very few systems, despite the current technology environment, that have everything in it. And so you're always talking about pulling information from multiple platforms, usually through what we call APIs, or basically I call them translation languages between platforms that may exist or not. What's interesting about this for those banks that are interested in the financial advice delivery, we tend to see three major platforms out there used as what we call the core fintech stack. What does that mean, stack? In other words, the technology tools you use that are unique and need to talk to each other. What's interesting about this is that we have seen a nuance that a lot of people haven't picked up. Most of these tools are either built for a technical advisor experience or an audience, or they're built for the consumer, an engaging experience. In other words, who's going to feed this work product? Is it a technical person? So I'll make it as technical as I can. Or is it going to be a consumer, which means I need to put the little like rubber protective things on the end, okay? It's got to be simple enough that they're not going to freak out. And what's interesting about the marketplace, and you can kind of see where we think we sit, we tend to spend a lot of our time in the planning/CRM engagement audience. So how do I make this conversation about the facts and the relationships and then the planning? That's where we tend to sit. And our current integrations as of, I guess, probably last month, because this has already evolved, are listed in green. And what you take from this is that there's a critical amount of effort that needs to happen when you integrate. And what we've tended to see is that if companies are looking for building a wealth management experience, they might go with a connection that looks something like this. Or if they're trying to build a an insight, right? They love data. They really want to understand what's going on, collect an enormous amount of data. They might build a stack that looks like this. Or if they think they're going to position as, we're a holistic planning unit, right? We're doing private client. We're looking at a lot of these different things. We need to create portals for our clients and high-end trading opportunities. And if we're really technical, we want to charge a fee. We need to really be strong on the legal and the tax side. We're going to build a very technically robust platform that connects a lot of these platforms. But at the end of the day, you still need a layer of customer engagement. Otherwise, you never get them into this funnel. And what we tend to see is that when you think of the whole customer journey from a tech position, what are the kinds of tools that you need to have in place to execute on a financial planning value proposition? You may not have all of these pieces, but we tend to see that companies always focus on this. I got to introduce you to my financial planning somehow, often through the tellers, or there's relationship there, there's business banking. I got to interact with you somehow, either face to face or with digital. I got to collect some data. I got to give you guidance. I got to implement that guidance, and then of course I got to manage the relationship on an ongoing basis. The different tech companies that you need to work with, some of them have solutions for multiple things, right? AssetMap tends to focus on the green stuff, but there are other companies that do great jobs at these stuff. I think that the key part for a lot of individuals in the space to recognize is that there are some things that are obvious we need to get off our plate. Calendar scheduling, that's that is table stakes, right? Everybody should have a digital calendar scheduler, so banking customers can actually literally just schedule with you online and find times that work for them and meet with you instantly, remotely or in person. That you have to do this. This is not an issue anymore. Marketing, letting people know that you exist and that you can do this stuff has to be part of it. I see banks really fall down here. They haven't done a great job of showing what's in it for the client and creating a new engagement experience. When you do stuff like what we're doing, you got to differentiate versus the 15,000 other people that are doing financial planning. How are you different? What are you delivering to me? Why does it make my life easier? And of course, the bigger challenge in financial planning is that you have core financial planning, which is I think what AssetMap does. And then you have advanced financial planning, which is really what I think our friends in financial planning tools do. They're great for estates. They're great for very high-end cash flow analysis. It's probably touching 20 to 50% of your client base. The challenge is everybody deserves, and from the quality perspective, everybody needs to have goal-based financial planning at some point at the core level discussed and so forth. With regulation coming down the pike that we don't know where it's going to go, I think it's going to get stronger between data security, privacy, as well as best interest. That means we need to document everything like the Dickens, and we need to protect it like never before. And so it's really critical that we have to have a process. And one of the things that we've been working on very heavily is how do we make sure that you can actually defend best interest advice, not just document it. That's going to come down to what can you produce at the time of an event of an audit, or God forbid, an attack that basically indicates that you have a problem. And so how do we make sure that that is seamless so that you can automatically have your defense already set up? I think, and I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here because I really want to get to questions. I think the key for what we've been focusing is that when engagement happens, what we've proved out over the last 5 years doing this is that advisors make more money. These are actual real numbers to scale of our largest advisory group of 1,000 advisors using AssetMap versus those that are not. They're making significant gains in income and production. And when you make more money, you obviously, you do better in the business for a lot of reasons. And I think the key to that is that advisors are retaining in the business if they're using this process. And whatever engagement process you're thinking about considering in delivering financial advice at the banking level, it's got to be really critical. Advisors have to use it, because if they're not going to use it, then you're just wasting money and there's no ROI there. But it's got to deliver data insight, and I think that's really critical today. With that, I think I'm going to ask Allison to come back online. And Allison, if you would please help me understand if there are questions out there that we can address for our community here.
Sure, I'd love to. And that's a good reminder. So those of you who haven't typed in your questions yet, please go ahead and type them in the question box. We'd be happy to address them. We'd love to hear what you guys have going on as far as just hearing what Adam had to say and some ideas that you might have or questions about some more clarity around it. So go ahead and type them in. but a couple questions we had throughout the session. So how are advisors using AssetMap in conjunction with some other planning tools?
That's a great question. Interestingly enough, we were really pleasantly surprised to see how the largest planning company out there, Money Guide Pro, has about 30% of the market share, chose to integrate with us. They built one that enables those people in Money Guide Pro to take that robust data and push it to an AssetMap. So for the presentation layer, if I can come into a meeting with a client, I could actually take that fantastic analysis and I can compress the visualization to one page, and which becomes really, I think we'll call it engaging. So that's one way. We are working, and we're about to release a project that will enable us to push data to financial planning platforms. I think you're going to see that innovation, to the person who asked that question, probably grow. All right. AssetMap has been really strong at collecting data up front, and then being very choiceful as to, how we move that to the next level of engagement, including, notwithstanding, straight through processing, app opening, account opening, and so forth, right? All of this stuff is on the timeline of capacity. Right now, we're integrating with a bunch of CRMs that have straight through processing accessibility for insurance and annuity. So I could literally be with a client and then just go right to application and solve the problem right from the planning engagement. So those are, that's going to continue to evolve, Allison.
Great. So how are banks using this currently along with their licensed bankers? So it might be a good way to get bankers involved to make referrals, other lines of business, mortgage reps, private banking, trusts, so on and so forth. How can AssetMap be used, with everyone that was listed?
Also, strong question. When we originally built AssetMap, it was built for a financial advisory firm, and that meant that there were multiple specialists and multiple roles: paraplanners, administrative staff, overseers, compliance, and the whole platform is set up as a collaborative platform. So when you have a unit or a community or a firm or company or bank that has access all the same, you can have different roles and responsibilities and access to data and clients. And we found that in the bank channel specifically, for those who are engaged financial reps, and in some case tellers, have the capacity to say, hey, here's a value proposition we're creating for our clients, which is we're going to put your life on one page. Doesn't that sound interesting? Yeah, let me set up some time with you if that's of interest. You say you've got retirement or education planning coming up, or you're thinking about buying insurance. Let's do a scan. Let's do a financial X-ray. Let's build your map for you, and we'll be happy to give it to you since you're a client of ours. Awesome, great. What do I do next? Well, remember that QR code I showed you, or that link that you can put on your website? And then I didn't really show it to you. I'll show it to you again just so you know what I'm talking about, if I can find it, right? So this is either, we're finding banks actually put this in the kiosks, right? In kiosks, literally like a mobile. You could sit on the couch there and you could do it right there, or you could send yourself, you could take a photocopy of this QR code, or I can email you a link. It's on the bank, right? Build your own AssetMap now. We even have some banks that are putting up these big placards. When you walk into the branch, it says, hey, do you have an AssetMap? And it shows the person holding an AssetMap and talking about it. And they're trying to engage people to say, hey, you want to take your level, your life to the next level? It doesn't have to be intimidating. We can do this in a 20-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting, and we can do it virtually. So that's a lot of answers for you, Allison, and for the person who asked that question. But that's why I said the opportunity to think and do things differently is really strong. One bank came to us and said that they want to put a touchscreen kiosk in the bank where they could literally someone could just walk up to it and just start building this. We want to just start build it. It's interesting because our pushback on that was, I don't think anybody wants to see me enter my personal private financial data on a big screen that they can all see, right? I think I'd rather it in an iPad I can control or a tablet, which doesn't have to be expensive. Or maybe I'll do it on my own phone when I get home, right? So it doesn't have to be right now. So I think the key is to enable all of these. These are all built, they're already done, and the customization is already there. Banks can literally plug this and play. We can be up in a week. This is not a problem. So and it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg to do what seems standard today, customization. So anyway, barriers to entries are very low. Barriers to not doing it extremely high, because what happens is that if you don't do something like this, if you don't create an engagement experience around advice, the challenge is that financial advisors adopting this platform significantly are going to bring your clients an AssetMap with a different brand. And the challenge with that will be very few people are going to want to create an AssetMap twice, we think. So it's really critical that if this is something that it's of interest to you, you need to pilot it, you need to proof of concept it out, you need to try and get the validation data, as we already have, that the clients actually want and care about it, and you can implement it.
Great.
I don't know if I answered the last part of the question. I guess the part I missed was the collaboration. So if you need to move it down the pipeline or the chain, you can move it, escalate it, collaborate on households themselves, as well as have someone who is the data scientist looking at it and saying, hey, a lot of people in this branch in Missouri are missing the opportunity to talk about life insurance. Let's connect them with the branch in Texas that's doing a great amount of life insurance production. Let's figure out how we can collaborate. Let's send all these asset maps to Texas. Let them look at it, tell us how to talk about it. And so the collaborative opportunity of different expertise is really critical when you're looking holistically.
Looks like we have one more, if you don't mind.
No,
thank you everyone for your questions. This one came in a couple times, actually. So it seems like a lot of bank clients only want to discuss their checking and savings accounts when they come into the branch. How can we help overcome the difficulty of collecting additional information from our transactional clients?
Yeah, one of the ways that we've heard, and I know financial advisors have been doing this for years, is regulation, and prudent advice, regardless of whether the SEC, the DOL, or FINRA is involved, is a tenet of, we'll call it consultative selling and advice. What do I talk about? I have a fiduciary argument to myself that I got to collect information on you before I give you good guidance, right? I can't give you guidance in a vacuum. In fact, there's a common practice or saying in the medical environment that prescription without diagnosis is called malpractice. And what's interesting about the new regulatory environment, whether it was KYC, know your client, or this new stuff, is that it allows us to say to the client, listen, compliance requires that I collect some high-level information. Banks in general are already collecting, in many cases, driver's licenses, household income, big general numbers. And so the argument could be that every once in a while, we need to make sure that our data is appropriate and checked in as a certain date. So in other words, I need to update my records and so forth. Here's an example. There was a gentleman who was working as a financial advisor in a bank. He didn't have any clients. He didn't have any relationships. He was new. But he had a whole bunch of orphan clients, basically people that his predecessor in the role had worked with and nobody had followed up with. So what he did is he basically got access to AssetMap from his prior firm. He brought it with him and he said, okay, I'm going to create an AssetMap for all these households that were not engaged. He got permission. He created an AssetMap based upon the files and junk that he found around in the account. He overlaid a stencil, as I showed you, about what his peers had, and he mailed that out to his clients. And he said, listen, I need to update my records. We're looking at this stuff. We need to make sure we're delivering that the stuff that you've purchased from us still makes sense. And we're just checking in. He sent out 25 maps. He got 16 back. He did $60,000 in production in the form of fixing stuff that was wrong, new annuity sales, new investments, new insurance. And that he did that in 2.5 months. The interesting thing about that is that it was a scrappy way to go about doing it, but it totally worked. And I'll guarantee you that the people he worked with really appreciated the reach out. It wasn't the typical reach out. It was definitely high touch. But the point is that was 4 years ago. So today we can do that digitally. Probably you're going to get more engagement, but I can't impress upon you enough that sometimes getting the information that we typically don't ask for from a bank, we do have permission. We've just decided we're not going to ask. And so the key is to provide a framework that makes it less intimidating and aligned with our interests. Is you give me the information, I'm going to give you guidance on what I know about it in the tax world and the savings world and different investment opportunities. I think it's critical today. We need to remind clients what we do, and we actually need to deliver it in real, tangible value, not just theoretical value. We do retirement plans. Oh, great, good for you. We do. People don't know what that means, right? But if I can show you, hey, have you thought about adding a retirement plan here or buying insurance or using annuity? Here's what it does for you specifically. That's a different story. And I think that's where we need to get to. If we're going to re-envision the bank of the future, is really to recognize that we have this unprecedented opportunity at the bank with the credibility and the financial capital to literally solve more problems for clients by actually reaching out to them as opposed to waiting for them to show up and saying, I have needs. That's not going to work because you can't compete 4 or 5 years out against the engagement that's going to come from both robo and advisor of the future. So with that, I think I'm pretty much done unless you have other comments or questions, community. We really appreciate you being here. Allison, any other thoughts?
Absolutely. No, that's it. Thank you so much for taking those questions and writing them in, everyone. And if you need anything else, you always feel free to contact us, and I'll let you close out there, Adam.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you so much to all of us that have been part of it. Thanks to our team at AssetMap, also Allison Susko, our Director of Partnerships. Please reach out if you need to talk to her. Also, Matt LeBenz and Matt Paulson, who've been really critical about helping us go into the bank channel. We're here to help you and support you. If there's any ways that we can give you guidance or just want to talk about the future and see what we can do or what we know about, we're happy to help. And of course, we have actually a large program that's going to be coming in the middle of the summer. We're going to be profiling a whole bunch of tech programs, not just ours, everybody. We're bringing everybody together for a huge program. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for that so you can see what everybody's doing in this space and get updated as to what's coming. So with that, Allison, I thank you for hosting, and we hope to connect with you guys soon.